The Republican Party's war of political vengeance against the Disney Corporation is further escalating as they try to rescind 2 no-fly zones above Disney theme parks that the Republican Party themselves gave Disney 20 years ago. Intrigued? Then click that like and subscribe and enjoy the video. So this one's pretty interesting because we've done videos and there's been much coverage about Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida, the Republican governor of Florida, and potential rival to Donald Trump for the Republican presidential nomination in 2024, even though he is yet to formally announce. He has been engaged, as you may know, with an ongoing back and forth between Disney for over a year now, ever since he proposed the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, which is extremely restrictive and opens the door to homophobia and transphobia in Florida schools by targeting the LGBTQ community. Disney voiced opposition to that, publicly voiced opposition to that piece of legislation. And when the bill passed and became law, thanks to Florida's Republican supermajority, Disney said that they would leverage, their financial weight to lobby against the bill. And that triggered a political war against Disney by Ron DeSantis, because as soon as Disney exercised their First Amendment, right to free speech, the so-called Free Speech Party decided to punish them for it. And so under DeSantis, the Republican Party in Florida has revoked Disney's special tax status. They've usurped control over the Reedy Creek district, which is where Disney's theme park sits. And there's been an ongoing back and forth of litigation between Republican attorneys and Disney attorneys. Now, for the most part, that seemed confined to Florida. It was still news, it was still relevant, it was still demonstration of abject hypocrisy and double standards of the Republican Party. But now, that hypocrisy and that political war seems to be seeping into the halls of federal power as well. What am I talking about? Well, a Republican congressman, a federal congressman, a member of the United States House of Representatives, Troy Nehls, is proposing legislation which would revoke 2 no-fly zones over Disneyland and Disney World, so in Florida and California. And this is a very short press release, and one of Nehls' very high-profile Republican colleagues just gives the game away by flat out telling the American public exactly why they're doing this. But just a bit of a recap, a no-fly zone basically says that, under a certain radius or on a certain radius, you can't have commercial air traffic. So you can't have American Airlines or Delta or a private plane or whatever fly over a particular spot. Now, usually this is reserved for very high-profile government settings, so like the White House or Congress or the Pentagon. You can't fly, you can't, get on an air flight to go to the Bahamas or whatever and fly over the White House. You'll probably get shot down if you violate that no-fly zone. But in 2003, after 9/11, the Republican-led Congress, federal Congress in 2003, also granted Disney's theme parks special no-fly status. And it's understandable why they would do that, even though obviously Disney is not a site of government power or anything like that. The logic was, in the aftermath of 9/11, when we were cracking down on national security and we were constantly trying to be vigilant, at least on paper, for the next terrorist attack, Disney would seem to be a pretty high-profile non-government target, right? Because you're talking about 2 commercial staples, some of the highest tourism rates of any site in the country, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of visitors. If a terrorist wanted to do major civilian damage, as they did on 9/11, it seems like Disney World and Disneyland would be a place to target. That said, things have changed in the past 20 years. And if, the government wanted to rescind those things, fair enough. If they want to say, listen, there was special status along the way, but it's been 20 years and our international and domestic security is a lot higher, and so Disney doesn't deserve special treatment. At least on paper, that would make sense. But again, the Republicans give the game away. So the press conference or the press release says Nehls reintroduced the Airlines Independent of Restrictions, AIR, Act, a bill that would direct Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg to rescind the 2 no-fly zones over Disneyland and Disney World. Disney is the only theme park in the United States which benefits from the restriction for commercial gains of eliminating banner ads and disruptive aircraft from their parks. Most flight-restricted areas in the U.S. are over places of high security or hazardous regions, again, like the White House, the Pentagon, etc. And so he says, I'm proud to introduce the bill. Theme parks like Disney should not receive special treatment just because they're well-connected. Our national security should not be compromised to fit the needs of one corporation. Now, I don't know why Disney enjoying 2 fly zones would compromise national security, if that's been the case for 20 years, and it was Republicans that gave Disney these no-fly zones in the first place, doesn't seem like that makes much sense. And so here's where the Republicans give the game away. And this is from Lauren Boebert, one of the most high-profile members of the Freedom Caucus, a deranged MAGA lunatic on par with Marjorie Taylor Greene. Look at what she says. This is in the official press release. So the Republican Party and the Republican author of this legislation endorses the sentiment. Woke corporations shouldn't get any favors from the government, said Congressman Boebert. The FAA has no business granting a no-fly zone over Disney parks. Universal Studios, Hershey's Park, Six Flags, and other theme parks don't have no-fly zones over them. And it's time for Disney to get the same treatment. No corporation should get preferential treatment from the government, especially when it is grooming children. Go woke, go broke. So there you go, right? Again, I'm willing to, again, throw a bone here. In theory, I have nothing wrong with the Republican Party, the Democratic Party, both, neither, whatever, attempting to rescind these no-fly zones. But the logic behind it, this is clearly spite motivated. This is not a matter of pragmatism or consistency or objectivity. This is the Republican Party desperately scrambling for ways to punish Disney for breaking ranks with them. Now, this is where it's important because it speaks to not only Republican hypocrisy, but also Republican cancel culture. So the claim is on the right and by Republicans that the left likes to cancel people, when in reality, U.S. history, modern history, ancient history is littered with examples of conservatives, either religious conservatives, political conservatives, what have you, attempting to cancel, to silence and suppress those with whom they disagree. Even right now, we have Republican presidential candidates attempting to raise the voting age away from a demographic that overwhelmingly votes against them. And Disney's a great example of this as well. So Republicans love the First Amendment, they say. Free speech for everybody. Everybody should be able to speak their mind without threat of consequences. Unless you're Disney, apparently. And you can say, well, Disney's not a person. But it's Republicans and conservatives who have always said corporations are people. It was Republicans and conservatives who backed the Citizens United decision, which essentially codified corporations as people as far as political campaigns were concerned. It's also the Republican Party and conservatives like, you don't need to regulate the free market. You don't need to interfere with the free market. Government needs to stay away from businesses and do whatever they gosh darn well please. Except apparently when those businesses use their free speech rights to criticize conservative or Republican policy, then it's unacceptable. This is a classic textbook example of Republican cancel culture, conservative cancel culture. This isn't liberal cancel culture. It's not progressive cancel culture. It's not Democratic cancel culture. This is cancel culture from the right. You should call it out. Anytime a Republican or conservative talks a big game about left-wing cancel culture, be like, no. Republican cancel culture, conservative cancel culture is infinitely more robust than anything from the left and from the Democratic Party. Going all the way back to, the days when conservatives wouldn't allow black people to vote, women to vote. That's cancel culture. When they wouldn't allow black people and white people to get married. When they would suppress, silence, or oppose, gay people from engaging in love publicly or marrying, or the Hays Code, which restricted how media could, celebrate certain types of marriage or certain types of love, again, between two consenting adults. You had the Dixie Chicks, great example. They criticize a Republican president. They get ripped off the American airwaves. Bill Maher, on his politically incorrect show, criticizes the military. He gets canceled. Colin Kaepernick kneels before the flag or turns his back on the flag. Conservatives everywhere want him to be fired. They threaten to boycott the NFL. They call to boycott the NFL as punishment in return. You have attempted boycotts of Target, Gillette, whatever. Donald Trump and the Republican Party silence or censor members of their own party for criticizing Donald Trump. Donald Trump wants to blow up libel laws and slander laws so he can criticize or sue members of the media who criticize him. Cancel culture, cancel culture, cancel culture. It's everywhere on the right. So this is just one example of it, and we'll see how Disney responds.